What's a company you refuse to support and why? God, I hate MLMs so much for a variety of reasons. The most egregious, in my opinion, is how they prey on people needing friendship. My wife was going through a rough time not long after we got married. We'd moved, had job changes, family issues, and a huge falling out with her friend group. She was pretty depressed and just feeling generally down and lonely all the time. Randomly, an old friend of hers reached out just to chat. This friend spent 3 to 4 weeks rekindling a friendship with my wife, who was thrilled, and I could tell she was shifting towards being happy. After those few weeks, this friend started to drop in tidbits about her new business, how good it was, and how she was independent, etc., etc. 2 weeks later, she started pushing to have a meeting with my wife and me to discuss the opportunity. I've been subjected to the pitches of multiple MLMs in my life. My sister was into several, and I had that sinking gut feeling. I told my wife I wasn't sure about it and that it seemed like an MLM. She talked to this friend who insisted it wasn't an MLM, so we set up the meeting. It was, in fact, an MLM. We politely declined, explaining it wasn't a great fit for us and we weren't in a position to pursue the opportunity. She reached out to my wife one more time after the meeting with a hard pitch and then completely ghosted her. It's just a really crappy business model that preys on vulnerable people. My wife is doing great now, loves her job, and most of the issues we were experiencing have improved or resolved in one way or another. And as a quick PSA, if anyone ever wants you to get involved with an opportunity for referral marketing and or tells you to read the book, Who Moved My Cheese? Tell them to get bent. Yikes, that's a really tough spot to be in without that kind of behavior under the mask of friendship. Story 2. Goodwill. They overprice their items, sell more valuable items off to the side, and underpay their employees with disabilities. Please, please, please look at other charity places to donate your old clothing to. If you're in the Academia area in Louisiana, the Arc of Academia directly funds programs for people who are developmentally delayed and or disabled and their families, as well as providing jobs for them. They want them to be successful and secure. Story 3. I used to go to Dollar General all the time. In December 2023, I ran in to grab some last-minute items when the guy working stopped me and loudly exclaimed that I wasn't allowed in there because I was a thief. I've never been in trouble all my life, let alone shoplifted from anywhere. He refused to show me proof of the picture he supposedly had. After much prodding, he eventually admitted that I was not the person in the supposed picture. I went about my shopping and was followed the entire time as if I were an actual thief. When I went to check out, I asked for the contact information for management because I was very upset about being called a thief, loudly and in a small town when it wasn't even me. The guy then proceeded to take my basket of items, literally threw them at the wall, almost hitting another older lady, and told me to leave immediately. He refused service and threatened me. I'm 45 years old. I was in total shock. I immediately called the Dollar General hotline, left messages, and sent emails. I was never contacted and nothing was done to this person. Sadly, 6 months later, the same guy was arrested for harming his wife with a hammer in front of their 3-year-old child. I will never shop there again. Story 4. Smithfield Farms is a company I refuse to support for 2 major reasons. 1. There have been repeated reports and investigations linking their operations to exploitation of vulnerable laborers. 2. Despite publicly promising to phase out gestation crates for pregnant pigs years ago, they've consistently stalled or avoided real progress. Now, I'm not here to tell people to stop eating pork, but how that pork is produced matters deeply in both public health and agricultural ethics. And I'm saying this as a person from a family of pig farmers. Gestation crates are one of the most inhumane practices still allowed in industrial farming. They confine pregnant sows in metal cages so small the animals literally cannot turn around. They're forced to stand or lie on concrete, staring at the same wall for months on end. No sunlight, no straw, no social contact, no stimulation, just boredom, pain, and isolation. Pigs are incredibly intelligent social creatures. As such, pigs are capable of experiencing deep emotional distress. Under these conditions of sow crates, they often go insane. Numerous undercover investigations have shown pigs in these crates biting the bars compulsively, frothing, foaming, or rocking back and forth, screaming, or completely silent. Behaviors that are clear signs of psychological breakdown. They look visibly miserable, broken. To make things worse, because the animals are so stressed and immunocompromised, producers must use incredible amounts of antibiotics like Carpetright, which is considered carcinogenic and banned in many countries. This isn't just about animal welfare, it's about the ethics of our entire food system. Smithfield is well aware of these issues and they've chosen profit over reform. That's why I can't, in good conscience, support them. And you know who sells Smithfield pork products? Costco. Story 5. I stopped ordering from Papa John's back during the passage of the Affordable Care Act because the founder/slash CEO was adamantly against it, claiming that if he was required to provide health insurance to his employees, prices would go up by as much as 14 cents per pizza. Gasp. Like, screw anyone who thinks that it isn't worth a measly 14 cents to know the poor kid making their pizza has access to health care. Then later, the CEO was outed for using the N word in a conference call, so that further justified my avoidance of the company. Now, that massive schmuck is gone and fully divested from the company, but they moved their headquarters out of my city, so screw them, I still won't eat their lousy pizza. Although I will admit this last reason is just petty. Story 6. I didn't realize I was boycotting so many things for the fact that I just don't support their business practices or the owner's ideals. Chick-fil-A, Target, Shein, all other fast fashion brands, Amazon, Walmart. But my holy grail of heck no, never for any reason is Walgreens. They failed to protect an employee from a coworker who was making her uncomfortable with his advances. He ended her in the Walgreens break room. It took them hours to find her. It shouldn't have been possible, but it happened without a single hitch in his messed up plan. Walgreens should go out of business for the layers of failures to protect their employees. Story 7. Subway, they priced themselves out of the market and the issues with their spokesperson don't help. They were a go-to as a broke student who could get multiple footlongs for $5 and eat for a couple of days. Now their quality has gone to crap, their prices are way too high, and they are slower than a sit-down restaurant, which would also be cheaper. Honestly, McDonald's has gone the same way, but I have a 7-year-old, so it's harder to avoid. I guess their spokesperson really did take a bite out of their business, and not just kinda the sandwich kind. Story 8. The wonderful company because their owners, the Resnicks, are purely terrible humans. I used to love their salt and pepper pistachios, but then I learned about all the terrible things they have done regarding water rights and advocating for war in foreign countries to monopolize their industries, and I'll never buy another product from them. Nobody should. Pomegranate juice doesn't have the antioxidant properties that studies showed. All those studies were sponsored and manipulated by Resnick-hired scientists, like the tobacco industry and their scientific studies about cigarettes. And you can get everything they make from other companies. Screw the Resnicks. Story 9. Chevy, Ford, GMC, there's absolutely no excuse for making garbage vehicles that bomb out at 100,000 miles. It's crappy engineering. They can make vehicles that go 250K or more easily. They simply choose not to. And then they have the audacity to ask for premium dollars. Thanks for the $75,000. Here's your hunk of crap. I'm talking about transmissions, engines, starters, alternators, sensors. Don't chalk up your losses to, well, it does have 50,000 miles. But yes, they sold you crap. Story 10. Apple. Have you tried their operating system? Worst crap I've ever dealt with. 2 clicks to minimize a window. You have to maximize just to minimize. Now who the heck is responsible for that? The file system is atrocious. I search for something and can't tell which copy I'm looking at and where it's located. If I copy something to a drive, then I want to delete the old one. I don't know which is which. If I let the laptop go out with a USB hub connected, when it turns back on, nothing will be connected unless I plug literally everything and plug it back in as the laptop restarts. I genuinely freaking despise Apple products so much it stokes a fire inside. Story 11. Wells Fargo. While I'm sure all the national banks have had questionable practices, in the mid-2010s, they created an incentive structure and a lack of oversight that had branches opening millions of fake accounts in their existing customers' names, saddling them, in some cases, nightmare cleanups of false charges and check systems reports. Sure, they were fined $3 billion in early 2020, still chump change for a company their size, but more recent reports seem to show they still have the systematic problems and this continues to occur. Story 12. I will not support Chick-fil-A. The family that owns it donates huge amounts to organizations that run the unconscionable conversion camps that try to turn LGBTQ people straight. The camps are pretty awful. Ultimately, people sent there learn to lie and pretend to be straight to avoid the consequences they get if they don't. To be clear, the company Chick-fil-A no longer donates to such an organization because they got too much backlash, but the owners do. Therefore, a tiny portion of whatever I pay there goes to fund these programs, which are not only brutal and damaging, but ineffective. Also, I hate the ridiculous spelling of their name, like come on. I also won't shop at Lululemon. The founder, Chip Wilson, claims he deliberately named the company Lululemon because Japanese people would have a hard time saying the name due to all the L's, and it's funny to watch them try to say it. Story 13. Papa John's Pizza. He threw a giant freaking hissy fit when the ACA passed because giving his full-time workers health insurance would have cost him like $2 million a year, and so instead he slashed hours and made all his non-management positions part-time only. Then he gave away $10 million worth, 5 years of health insurance he would have had to pay, of pizzas as a Super Bowl promotion. It wasn't about the cost, it was about not giving a crap about his employees. Screw Papa John's, I'd rather eat moldy stuff than give them money. And yes, I'm aware John himself has stepped down as CEO, but as long as the remaining leadership continues the policy of part-time work only to avoid providing health insurance, they won't get a friggin' penny from me, and I actually really like their pizza. Story 14. GameStop. I worked there for a little bit, and this may vary from location to location. When you trade in a game, if it's newish and in great condition with the manuals and everything still intact, we would wrap it like new and sell it to customers as a new product. We were expected to sneak subscriptions onto young kids when adults were not present, and lie if confronted later that the kid must have asked for it and play dumb. If someone who spoke very poor English came in, we'd add on things to their bill and then tell them they had to take it up with HR. Even if you were hired for a local GameStop, you were actually expected to be ready and willing to drive up to 2 hours away to another location to fill in, particularly during things like Black Friday. Women were fired for having babies with absolutely no coverage. If you worked for GameStop for too many years, you were let go before you could claim any benefits. Used game trade-ins that could not be turned into new game sales typically had their cases and manuals trashed. The company is mismanaged, has a lot of favoritism, and hates its employees. I was let go because I wouldn't do most of these. Sneaking charges on kids and non-native speakers seem illegal to me, and I tended to try to keep people from buying a used game that was listed as new. I don't do retail anymore, graduated uni, and avoided retail like the plague. Story 15. Melinda's hot sauces. A woman named Marie Sharp from Belize started making hot sauces and then named them after her farm, Melinda, and signed a contract with a US-based distributor, but they were the sole distributor internationally. Through some legal BS, they trademarked the brand name for themselves and essentially cut the founder out. After 5 years of legal battles, she relinquished the right to her brand in exchange for being let out of the sole distributor contract. Now she has a new brand named after herself. So, for hot sauces, Melinda's bad, Marie Sharp, good. Story 16. WWE. Even if you look past the problematic nature of the people that have been on the top of it, which I certainly don't, I can't look past the fact that they have been trying to basically erase and overwrite wrestling history, and also are trying to become a worldwide monopoly by buying other promotions in foreign countries and either become the only wrestling promotion in town, like they're trying in Mexico and successfully did in the US, or torch it into the ground if they can't, like in the UK. Also, they're mostly funded by Saudi money. Screw the WWE. Story 17. I do everything I can to avoid using PayPal. They are thieves and have screwed me and so many others. If you do use them, absolutely make sure you don't keep a balance in your account that you'd miss if they spontaneously decide you violated something in their TOS and then just take all your money. In my case, I had the audacity to log into my account on a VPN, which I use for nearly all my web browsing. I was fortunate I only had $150 in the account. Many have suffered far worse, and when sued, PayPal has consistently managed to keep it out of court either through arbitration or settlement, so there is no legal precedent labeling their behavior as illegal, which it is. Don't use them, especially don't use them for a business account, and if you do, keep that account empty. I guess their customer service motto is arbitration or bust. No messy court cases to spoil the fun of keeping your money. Story 18. Prime Drinks. I just don't like the Pauls. Quick Trip. I worked there for 3 years. Do not apply. Run. 98% of the managers are the worst people you've ever met. They're raising prices but making the quality cheaper. HP. Screw their printers. I don't even know if the creators wake up and think, let's make the most complicated product on earth and have it not work almost 100% of the time. Goodwill. It used to be good, but they're overpriced everything now and are just not ethical. Walmart. I haven't been in one in the last 10 years that wasn't terrifying, and I live in the Midwest, so it's not like a big city where you'd expect odder people to be there. I genuinely just don't feel safe in them for some reason. Also, I thought they were supposed to be cheap, but their groceries are the same price as anywhere else. Walmart in general just sucks, the company, the people, etc. Story 19. I stopped supporting Papa John's Pizza when the Affordable Care Act ACA was being implemented. The CEO at the time was completely against it, claiming it would bankrupt companies by requiring them to provide health care for all employees. As a result, he had the company convert many full-time employees to part-time, specifically so they wouldn't meet the insurance requirements. This move significantly affected a lot of people, including a few of my friends who were working full-time at Papa John's and didn't have insurance to begin with. After the change, they weren't making enough money to support themselves due to the reduced hours. This all happened in the same year that Papa John's signed a contract with the NFL to become their official pizza, a deal worth over $1 billion. So Papa John's was generating incredible profits and securing massive deals, yet they refused to give their employees what was due, to the point of taking even more away. Screw Papa John's, their former racist CEO, and their terrible pizzas. Story 20. Frontier Airlines. My wife and I were going to meet some friends in Vegas last year, and instead of doing the 5-hour drive, we thought we'd make it a more enjoyable and romantic getaway and fly. Southwest wants somewhere around $600 per person round trip from Phoenix to Las Vegas now, which is just outrageous for a 45-minute flight. So I looked around and found a Frontier flight. How bad could it be, right? I paid to upgrade our seats to row 5. I paid for early check-in and early boarding. I even paid for an extra carry-on. Okay, great. We get to the airport and the flight is delayed something like 3 to 4 hours. Okay, whatever, we'll get there. We go to scan our boarding passes and they don't work. No one's did. So they reassign everyone's seats at the gate. We got put on the very last row where there isn't even a window. Okay, this sucks now. We sat at the gate for an hour, finally push off and taxi to the runway, only to turn around and go back to the gate because the flight crew had timed out by then. We deplaned and went straight to the parking garage with our bags, got in the car, and ended up just driving there. When it was all said and done, from the time we got to the airport until the time we got to Vegas, we could have driven there, had lunch, played a few games, and driven back home. I will never even consider them as an option again. Story 21. Hobby Lobby literally went to the Supreme Court, arguing they shouldn't have to cover birth control under their employee health plans while still being labeled ACA compliant. And they got their wish. So now women who work for them and have their insurance, who may not have any other options for birth control, cannot get it, even if it's not for contraception, for instance, to treat endometriosis, acne, or PCOS. And even if it were for birth control, these people make minimum wage. Do you think they should be having children they can't afford and don't want? All because of Hobby Lobby's deeply held religious views, they make all of their employees suffer. They're literally forcing their religious views onto others, and because of them, other companies can do this too. Story 22. Walmart. My dad was a proud man who worked hard all his life. At the age of 50, he was diagnosed with cancer. Ordinarily not too bad and treatable. The problem was his cancer metastasized, grew lumps on his spine. He became disabled from the chest down. He had a really hard time finding a job once he was treated for the cancer. We dipped into savings and bought him an accessible van so he could drive himself around. He finally got a job at Walmart as a greeter. He hated the job, but went in every shift, smiled, and did his job really well. He had regulars who liked talking to him. It did him good to get out of the house and be around people. He wasn't being paid much, but it was better than nothing, and my mom made decent money. They decided to fire the greeters and replace them with one of those one-way door swings. Most people could get a job doing something else, like stocking, but there wasn't anything my dad could do there. He was let go, and it was the last job he had before he passed away from symptoms related to being paralyzed. He was fine with being let go, but I have never forgiven them for firing great seniors and disabled people to save a few dollars. It's not like the company was hurting and on the verge of bankruptcy. Story 23. Disney. They're an awful company and a plague on humanity hiding behind a smiling mouse icon. Disney is one of the big media cartels. They don't just make kids' movies, they own streaming services, news organizations, and sports channels, and have a track record of acting in anti-competitive, monopolistic ways. Oh, also union busting and not being very employee-friendly. Plus, they manufacture a ton of plastic that ends up in the oceans in pursuit of selling children on memorabilia. They have people in the media pipeline, from kids to adults, having a firm grip on the messages they see and don't see in fiction and reality. They pose as progressive because it's profitable, and censor that progressiveness to reach conservative audiences. They used to make racist cartoons while somehow only delivering the most centrist takes in their films and shows. You need to do better, Senator. Story 24. Carpetright. We went there for flooring after buying our first house when we were in our mid-20s, so we were very naive to these things. The guy told us we needed to remove the skirting board for them to put laminate down. When the fitters came, they said they didn't need to do that, so that we had to pay to get it all refitted, and it looked terrible. They also measured wrong, and the fitters knew the guy by name as he does that all the time. Carpetright accepted no responsibility and said you'll have misunderstood, as he would never tell anyone to do that. And if these stories are getting to you too, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 25. My list is getting long, but the three biggest on my list are Walmart. They get so many government breaks and then treat their employees like dirt and also underpay them. A lot of their employees are getting food stamps because they are paid so poorly and end up giving their SNAP money back to Walmart to buy groceries. Hobby Lobby. They think they can control what medical care and coverage their employees get, and they stole artifacts from other countries and sold them. Amazon. Seriously, screw Jeff Bezos. He got so much richer from the lockdown and still treated his employees like disposable garbage. When I saw the profits he was making and not doing anything for the employees who were actually working, I canceled everything Amazon. I go out of my way to avoid giving him any of my money. Story 26. Starbucks. All the valid reasons apply, but the truth is, I was a customer once upon a time in high school when I had limited options and it was a second choice for me. I'm a coffee snob. I'm from Washington State, if that wasn't clear by the term coffee snob. And I don't come after baristas for doing their job wrong. I am a barista. But I work for a company that requires months of training and customer service, opening and closing operations, money management, etc. before you even begin bar training. That's because during that time, you're expected to know everything about espresso. We have machines that automate the pulling process, but before then, I had my own espresso machine and learned the craft at home. Starbucks is a mega corporation which leaves many stores with underqualified workers and managers. Not their fault, they should have been provided with training. Terrible recipes and subpar beans. Starbucks was good when it was starting out. My aunt worked for the company, but I've never ordered a drink where they didn't burn my espresso, and I'm not paying $7+ for a bad drink. I don't agree with the union busting, corporate greed, gentrification, globalization, poor quality, and poor treatment of their workers, but before any of that, the point still stood to me that their coffee was a steaming hot cup of swamp water. I don't want their overpriced strawberry lemonade, sugar-packed matcha, and if one more person comes into my shop, locally owned, and asks if we're a Starbucks extension, I will personally find the CEO and glitter bomb them, and when they run, they will slip on a carefully placed banana peel. They've also irrevocably ruined sizing. Stop asking for tall, grande, venti-sized drink. Please, it's ounces. Our store has our own names for the drink sizing, but ounces should be the standard for my geographic area. Story 27. Samsung. I bought the S7 Edge Olympics edition, which was pretty cool. 1 week later, the screen failed and I sent it in for warranty. The warranty shop gave me multiple lame excuses. We don't have the screen, now we don't have the glue, etc. My phone disappeared. Samsung also told me to send the phone and all the accessories from the purchase, but I kept the VR headset because that didn't feel right to me. I ended up having to open a complaint within the judicial system. Only then, an extremely rude and stupid lady from Samsung called me and literally said, "Silver or black?" And that was that. They gave me a normal S7 Edge with no refunds for the accessories or the extra money I paid for the limited edition. As soon as the phone arrived, I traded it in for an iPhone. Screw you, Samsung. Story 28. I plumbed a Costco store once. It took 100 days from breaking ground to opening with no weather delays. Just 100 days, period. As we got into the final stretch, I was talking to Costco's construction manager. I pointed at some of my work and asked how bad it could get before he'd say anything. He told me they didn't care as long as it worked. So when the job was done, he came around with these coupons for a discount to shop there. I told him I would not be buying anything from them. He asked why. I pointed at some of my work and said, "If you'll buy that kind of crap for me to make money, how can I trust the merchandise you buy to sell me to make money?" I told him that I also plumbed Kroger stores and they would make you go back and change work if it did not meet standards, even if it held up the job. I continued that made me feel I could trust the quality of their product. Story 29. Chick-fil-A and Autism speaks. My issue with Chick-fil-A is because of their LGBTQ+ stance and past actions. It might not be the most impactful, but it's some good chicken I don't want to be funding. Ironically, my LGBTQ sibling loves Chick-fil-A and will laugh at me when he gets it, but I don't. Autism Speaks. I'm autistic myself, and the organization Autism Speaks has a pretty negative past in regards to their contributions to autism advocacy. My reason for not supporting them, though, is because while they are the largest advocacy/lobbying group for autistics in the world, they are not a source of empowerment. Rather, they treat autism more like a media product and then use the proceeds to fund anti-autistic research. Eugenics through and through. I don't really care what your mission statement is if the message you use to gather funds runs contradictory to where those funds get put to use. Also, and this is getting granular, whenever the struggle with autism is brought up, is typically told as if they're speaking to the people taking care of those with autism, but never those with autism. This is a larger issue than just one organization, but this organization is partially responsible for perpetuating its existence. Story 30. The Red Cross. My daughter went off to college and walked by one of those tables where charities ask for donations during orientation. She knew we liked the Red Cross. I think I had a 7 or 8 gallon pin by that point. We gave them money, small amounts, for most things, then a large amount for Haiti in 2010. They were on the good list in her head. So she signed up, but not for a one-time donation. She signed up for a monthly donation. When she told us about it, we reminded her how poor she was. She needed that for basics. She tried to call to cancel the donation but couldn't reach anyone. So I started calling. I couldn't reach anyone who cared, but reps were willing to escalate at least. I eventually got to some upper level in donor services. Not a person, but a person's phone number. I left a message that explained what had happened, how we'd supported them for years, and how if they couldn't find it in their hearts to cancel a $10 a month donation, we were done. No response at all. We ended up having to cancel her card and get a new one. I was really happy the charge didn't start appearing on that one. They've never gotten another thing from us. We donate to local banks now and find other places for our disaster relief money. Story 31. Lush. I can't bear the smell. Sorry, Lush fans, but even going past it makes me feel ill. Also, I avoid the body shop because the staff won't leave you alone. As soon as staff don't follow me around as a local female, I generally leave the store. I understand why, because I look extremely young, dressed in teen clothing. I am a big fan of jeans with holes in them and have a unique style of clothing, which probably does make me look suspicious occasionally, but most stores don't feel the need to follow me constantly. When it happens, it can be a little annoying. If you're suspicious, search me. I don't mind because I don't steal. My mom likes the store Fat Face because of the name. I don't boycott any products or stores because I don't think it affects the people making the money. It affects people who don't make money. McDonald's doesn't care if you're boycotting it. It would be a penniless student who gets sacked if they don't have enough trade, not in those in head offices, so they don't care. Ordinary people are disposable to companies. No one who actually has power gets sacked because of boycotting. Although I must admit the boycott of the Sun in Liverpool has damaged the Sun newspaper, but most tabloids people are sadly scum, especially Piers Morgan and that editor from the Sun who wrote the Hillsborough article. But generally, you're boycotting McDonald's, Nestle, Walmart, etc. won't hurt the millionaires, it just hurts ordinary people. Because very few companies in the world care about ordinary workers or anyone above profit, so by all means boycott, but don't expect companies to care. Story 32. Dollar store with more. They terminated my employment without telling me. I've been working there for a good 3 years. I was at my own event, but I hadn't received the schedule for the week, so I messaged a coworker asking if she could send me a picture of it, assuming that they had just forgotten to send me one in all the chaos. It was the second week of January, so it was understandable that it was still chaos because of the holiday rush and all that. She then informed me that I wasn't on the schedule, and then I literally had to email my employer asking what was going on, only to be told I was let go. Story 33. Crate and Barrel / CB2. I purchased some shelving from them. Only after the purchase did they inform me that I needed to drive to another state to pick it up. Hours on the phone tree led nowhere. It was already promised to the buyer, so I drove 2 states away. The warehouse in Denver is run by a total psycho who seems to be related to the admin somehow. When I got there, he was making a disabled woman struggle to strap things to the roof of her own car while everyone else waited. The employees were begging him to let them help her, but he was just shouting bad words at her and recording it, refusing to let the nice black employees help her out on threat of firing. Finally, those of us picking up stepped in and helped her even though the guy was threatening to withhold our shipments. I demanded his card and he gave me someone else's, claiming there was no manager above him. I tried to email and call admin in the company and they basically said they didn't care. One of the creepiest things I've ever seen in person, to be honest. Anyone who supports that employee and offers no useful customer service will never get my support. Story 34. Apple, a company that admits to slowing down your device regardless of the bogus reasoning. I can't believe people still buy them. Not to mention the scam they've created where the devices come with like nothing and you have to purchase it. Joe Fresh, with such a big child labor scandal, I can't go back. Actually, Loblaws in general, I am still very much boycotting. Their greed is out of control. Tesla, for the common reason. Most American car companies, because I think their cars aren't built to last and are made of subpar material. All American Airlines, rude staff, rude passengers, terrible value, hidden add-ons, overselling, terrible planes, etc., etc., etc. Johnson & Johnson. Though I know they own a lot of stuff, I do avoid the Johnson & Johnson branded stuff because I simply don't trust them. Story 35. Not exactly a company on a large scale, but a local food truck. My kid was going to have a donut eating contest as one of their birthday party games the following week, and being the only business in this middle of nowhere town that supplies donuts, I messaged these guys the week before the party to place an order for a dozen cinnamon donuts. The reply, "We don't actually do orders, but we'll be out in town that weekend, so just come to us and we'll sort you out." They did operate every weekend and were usually very busy, and on-the-spot orders of donuts by the dozen weren't uncommon, so I took them at their word and waited until the following weekend, which was the day of the party. My husband and my kids stayed home to set up for the party while I drove to the donut truck's usual location, and there was no sign of them. I knew there were other food truck trading locations, so I checked them all out and did multiple loops trying to find them, but they were nowhere to be seen. Cue me sending them a message asking where they were today, and it went unanswered. I did one last drive when the party was in full swing in case they'd had a late start, but no good. One thing about small towns such as these is that a lot of businesses rely on Facebook and Messenger to advertise and communicate with customers, so there was no phone number I could call. I checked their Facebook page for any updates, but nothing. I ended up grabbing some plain bread rolls from the local supermarket, and these, while not tasting as good as donuts, got the job done for my kids' party, so all was well in the end. The day after, we were chilling out at home, resting in post-party mess, frazzled and exhausted from all the organizing but happy. I was scrolling Facebook when a familiar logo caught my eye. "Come get your donuts fresh and hot today," the donut truck's Facebook post said. I read further, "Now taking orders, just send us a message." I have not bought a single thing from those schmucks since that day. Story 36. American Express. In college, they gave me a credit card. I don't know why, I didn't have any money, but they gave it to me and I used it a little. Then I really ran out of money and didn't use it for a few months. Then I got a job right as I completely ran out of money and had to wait 2 weeks for my first check. Well, this is exactly what credit cards are for, so I go to get gas and it gets declined. I had to crawl under seat cushions for change to buy a few dollars worth of gas so I could make it back and forth to work. I get home and call and find out they canceled my card since I wasn't using it. I was like, "Hey, I couldn't pay you back if I did use it." Didn't matter, the card was canceled. More couch cushion diving and I get enough money together to buy some potatoes and rice, so that's what I got to eat those 2 weeks, along with whatever seasonings my 20-year-old dumb self had, which wasn't much. Then one day, I find in the back of the cupboard chocolate that a roommate had left behind. Chocolate. I've been eating rice and potatoes for a week and a half, and here is chocolate. I was in heaven. And that's the day I found out what baker's chocolate is. So, anyway, I don't do business with American Express. Story 37. Not entirely sure if they count as a company, but the Salvation Army. They will self-deploy and even bring along mission trip groups from church-based charities that work with them to the site of a disaster, flood, damage, fire, etc., then send a bill for food, room, and board for everyone who deployed to the same people who just experienced a major disaster. I went on one of those mission trips once. We and another church group stayed in one of the local churches, presumably for free. I wasn't the organizer for our group. I slept in a sleeping bag on top of a row of chairs and went out and bought our own food. And the only people we actually went to help were self-professed Christians, one of whom kept trying to hook me on what I now know to be phrenology. We weren't exactly living the high life in a Motel 6 or a Holiday Inn, but hey, we offered aid to professing Christians in a zone where there were countless other people who could need help, and it didn't matter that we were all, at the time, people who believed in being a good example so non-believers could see what being Christian is all about and convert. And that's not even getting into the strict, unwritten requirements for being allowed into the SA's homeless shelters. Namely that if you're visibly queer, especially in a way that the SA officials just don't like, there's a very high chance that you're out of luck. Well, you're just out of luck. I'm never donating to their bell ringers or sending any of my old stuff to their donation centers, at least not until I have concrete proof that they're better than this. I can make more of a positive mark on the world myself than any amount of money or things or time I might have donated to them. Story 38. The Mormon Church, they have billions but can't help the people unless your tithing is up to date. They won't open their churches for the homeless in the cold of winter or the heat of summer. It's the smaller churches that open the doors during this time in Utah. There are hundreds of Mormon churches, but they never help. They also support the Republican Party that takes everything from the working class. I was a member my entire life until 2017 when they supported Trump. I withdrew my membership after that. Any church that doesn't follow the teachings of God is a cult. Story 39. Amazon. They charged my bank card $150 when I didn't purchase anything. I called and was told it would be fixed and that I would be refunded in a few weeks. I would wait for weeks and call again, only to be told it would be refunded over and over and over again. I filed a dispute with my bank, Navy Federal, which I could only do through the app, to have it denied twice because I didn't provide sufficient documentation, even though I did. They straight up stole my money and wasted hours of my time calling them, only to be lied to over and over. I will never make another Amazon purchase again. Story 40. Any right-wing supporting organizations such as Publix because they paid to bus insurrectionists to the Capitol on January 6th. Walmart, Amazon for exploiting labor. The Walmart where I live during an ICE raid on undocumented and documented immigrant workers in their parking lot. The managers came out and let the ICE agents know, some got away and are hiding inside our store, come get them. Rio Rancho, NM, is already a tiny MAGA land in a deep blue state, but that really took the cake for me. I was already boycotting, now I hope they face consequences for their actions. Nestle, including their subsidiaries like Purina, for world-level crimes against humanity such as their infant formula program in Africa and their water waste. Coca-Cola for deliberately targeting and causing diabetes in whole villages in Mexico and Central America. Story 41. Casey's. At the start of the first Gulf War, they decided to jack up their gas prices from the mid $1 range to the mid $6 range overnight. They were sued by several state attorney generals for price gouging. Other gas stations raised their prices too, but nowhere near as much as Casey's did. Amoco and any successor corporations like BP. When I was in college, I was in the middle of a road trip and stopped at an Amoco station to fill up. Not only did they deny my Amoco card, which had no balance and no delinquencies, they told me that they needed to confiscate it. It's been almost 40 years, but I have not done any business with them ever since. Story 42. T-Mobile. Years ago, I was young and bought a brand new never-opened phone from someone. It worked fine for a month and then it just said couldn't connect to T-Mobile. Turns out T-Mobile signed a contract with this guy and gave him a phone to be paid off over a couple of years. He sold it for cash, a popular hustle apparently back in the pill popper days. Maybe I'm wrong, but that should be their problem and this guy's credit report problem, not mine. Pretty short-sighted policy because I ended up unlocking it and switching carriers, so they screwed themselves twice. I'd probably still be with them 20 years later had they not blocked the phone. Story 43. GovX. For those unfamiliar, it's a website that offers products to first responders and military at a discount. I ordered a pair of shoes on their site one time because they were much cheaper than retail. After several weeks of getting emails saying that they were working to fulfill the order, I got an email canceling the order saying that the item was out of stock. It peed me off that they took orders when they didn't either have the product in stock or have a reliable source for the items. Then my refund amount was $10 less than what I paid. When I called about it, I was told that they don't refund shipping fees. I had to go through 3 levels of escalation, explaining that nothing had ever shipped until I finally reached someone who could process the refund. Story 44. Microsoft, Meta, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Threads, and Google all are notorious for tracking their users to an extremely crappy degree. They know things about you before you know them. They've inferred pregnancies, anticipated divorces, recognized when partners are cheating on their significant others, and more. They know where you live and work, whether you like it or not. They know your gender orientation, political leanings, and religious affiliations, even if you never tell them and keep it private. They can tell when you are using another computer without you logging in. They know when you're asleep, in the shower, eating a meal, or having intimacy. And the entire reason they do all of this? To sell this data to the highest bidder, including the government, and use that data to serve you ads. Story 45. Air France. I had a flight booked on Air France about 12 years ago. They had a pilot strike and a bunch of flights were canceled. It went on for weeks. Fair enough, that happens. They had a helpline to call which hung up after 5 rings. No help online, no help by email, no callback service, no help at all. I couldn't wait until the day of the flight to find out if my flight would take place and if not, when I'd be able to fly. I needed to know if I could travel on my travel dates. So I ended up having to rebook with another airline, hope my flight would be canceled, which it was, and claim a refund. Things go wrong, that's acceptable. But to not be there for your customers when things do go wrong, that's not acceptable. Neither Air France nor KLM by association will never get my money again. They weren't there when I needed them. And if any of these stories got to you too, here's more for you. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video.